Well, you might have guessed, our Midrash today is to be on Torah portion Beit Hanan, when we read during our service. Before we get started on the Midrash, though, we'll be acknowledging that we had enjoyed some food together. So the text says in Devarim 8, verse 10, "You'll eat and be satisfied. You'll bless Adonai your God for the good land He has given you." So let's do it. Abba, we have eaten and we're satisfied. We thank you for the land. In Yeshua's name, we thank you. Amen. So we looked at this verse before we started, Beit Hanan, and it is it's the first verse of this portion, which begins in the middle of the chapter, really, chapter 3, verse 23, Beit Hanan. And we read it together, and we read, "I pleaded with the Almighty at that time, saying," that's the first verse of our portion. So here's kind of looking at this, at the word Beit Hanan. This is the word Hanan. It is to show favor or to be gracious. So that's why he said that it could be translated, "and I sought Adonai's favor." So you may recognize a word that is based on this three-letter root, Chen, or Het, Nun, Hanan. It's Yochanan and Yehochanan. John. Yah has been gracious would be a way to translate that. But the three-letter root, Hanan, is actually based on a two-letter root, Chen. And as you remember, it is a kind of a play on words from Noah. Noah in Bereshit or Genesis 6:8, which says, "Noah found favor in the eyes of Yud-He Vav-He." But in that verse, it's a play on words between Noah, Nun, Het, and favor, or grace, as it's often translated, Chen, Het, Nun. So it's Noah, Nun, Het, found favor, Het, Nun. So Hanan, and Beit Hanan, that's the kind of roots of that. So this is, again, another way. I sought Yah's favor might be another way to translate that based on the actual root word of Chen for Hanan. You can also look at it in terms of kind of as in a pictograph of sorts, where looking at the text under at that in that word Beit Hanan, you have the first letter there is a vav or a wa, as it would have been in ancient times. And what does that letter? Again, it's the first letter on the top right word there. The first letter, the vav or wa, is the pictograph, and what is that looking like? It's considered to be representation of a nail. And so in that word, you get nail, then the aleph tav, et, and then the word Hanan. And so the aleph tav can sometimes be used or as a, well, what is aleph and tav? What is that word? What does a word mean, aleph and tav? Well, it doesn't mean anything, right? It's a grammatical form saying who's the one showing a favor or requesting favor. And in this case, it's if I sought his favor, but the aleph tav can sometimes, because it's the first and the last letter of the Hebrew alphabet, sometimes be equated with the alpha and the omega on the Greek side. So you can look at this as a word play as nail, aleph tav representing Yah, and to be gracious. Or by the nail, aleph tav will give us what we don't deserve. That's the idea of grace. So looking at it as a word, perhaps at a level, a deeper level, perhaps a mystical level, looking at what the word kind of speaks to us at the time it's saying it. As a translation of the word is "and I pleaded." So the vav in this case has a meaning. It's the letter and is connector, and hence the nail. So it's connecting together. Okay, so now come to the another multiple guess question here. is, according to the traditional count of Rambam, aka Maimonides, there are how many mitzvot, how many of the commandments are in this portion? Is it A3, B7, C12, or D19? According to the tradition of the 613. Yeah, so Michaela, are you guessing A, or you were guessing a letter? You're guessing C, she says. Okay. So C. Any other guesses?
I'll go with B.
B, B7. Okay. Anyone want to guess A3?
B.
D, he said 19. Okay. And by a non-show of hands, who's afraid to vote? I said non-show of hands. Okay. So first one eliminated is which one? Which is the least likely answer?
3A.
A is eliminated. That is correct. Which one's next? It's B7. So this next one will give our answer, and it is, ta-da, it's 12. Good job. Okay, we'll go through just two slides of the mitzvot. And one of them is in the last verse of the 10 words reading that we did. So you got to understand that some of the 10 words, of course, are counted from the previous issuance of that in Exodus chapter 20. But here it has the last section of not coveting other people's stuff as one mitzvah of this of the listing here. Also in this Torah portion is the Shema, and the Shema is to hear or listen. We also have the Ve'ahavta, which is to love Adonai your Elohim with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. That's one of the mitzvahs, is to love him, as Devarim 6:5. Teaching the Torah to your children is taken from 6:7. Now, this next one, to recite the morning and evening, where does that come from? It's based on 6:7. What's the argument for? I'm saying that I think it might be more of
when you're lying down.
Yes, yes, that's exactly right. So when you get up when you're lying down are taken to be morning and evening. It seems to me that there's more to that passage than saying morning and evening. If you look at pull the passage here. It's based on, it says Devarim 6:7. When you lie down, when you rise up. But there's also when you sit in your house, when you walk by the way, when you lie down, and when you rise up. So it seems to me that's more. It's not really just reciting the Shema morning and evening. It's essentially living the Shema all the time. So that I think that's in the mitzvah is taken from 6:7, which says it says you shall impress our children, speak to them when you sit in your house, speak it of them. In other words, that idea. But I think it's more than just morning and evening in that sense.
I also think it's more than the Shema. These commandments, the Shema is just one thing.
Right, but when you look at it, if you look at it if you look at the previous verse 6, and these words which I'm commanding you today shall be on your heart. So
which was the 10, then the Shema, and a bunch of
stuff. Okay, so that's good. So I would say it's, in other words, what is it about Shema that and Ve'ahavta? If you listen to if you let's just look at those words here. Hear, O Israel, Shema Israel, Adonai Elohim, Adonai Elohim, Adonai Echad, and then Ve'ahavta. If you in fact carry out the Ve'ahavta, if you love him with all your heart, with all your being, with all your might, what is left over after that? I mean, if you're actually loving him,
Then you're doing his
you're doing it's the same.
Encompasses all of it.
Encompasses everything, right? It's the idea of having, again, from we'll see it later in Devarim, but we'll also see it with the prophet Jeremiah, to have the Torah written on your heart and in your inward parts.
Yeah.
The idea of that is, again, you're walking it out, you're doing it because of your love for him. That's the bottom line for that.
But if you also bring it straight down to the Shema, and that's all you're just reciting it, you're not really doing it.
Well, the Shema is followed by Ve'ahavta.
Right.
And
Right,
Ve'ahavta
right.
covers pretty much everything, I think.
Right, it covers it, it's just not,
You're just
People are-
saying if
people
you
are
recite it twice a day, you're not really
Right.
doing it. That's all you do.
that's not doing it, that's reciting it.
Yeah, it's, as I said, I think it's living it all the time.
Right.
Where's the
But
Behafta?
it's,
Where is the Behafta?
It starts in 6 verse 5.
Okay, thank you.
And you shall love. Ve'ahavta, and you shall love. So 6 verse 8 reads something like, and shall bind them, these words, as a sign on your hand. They should be frontless between your eyes. The mitzvot is broken down into 2. Bind the words as a sign on your hand in 6:8, and then continuing with on your head, also in 6:8. The mezuzot are in 6:9, which is to write them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates. 6:16 says, the text says, do not try Yehovah your Elohim as you tried him at Massa. And so Massa, as we read, is a word for to test. And it says, do not test the promises and warnings of Elohim as a mitzvah. So the next one is more of a overall commandment, I think, or more for all Israel, not just for individuals, but do not make a covenant with the 7 nations of Canaan, 7 verse 2. So what makes sense to me is that it is, the next chapter after chapter 6, but that tells it that doesn't, that's, it is more this is directed towards the y'all, if what, in words, Israel is not the covenant with the 7 nations of Canaan. Now, did they break that mitzvah?
yes,
With which tribe?
You mean with which?
I don't remember which tribe it was, but they came and were tricky and brought moldy bread so that we traveled a really long way.
It was, I recollect the Gibeonites were the tribe of Gibeon that did it. And we read it, I want to say, we discussed it last week, I want to say, is that the people who are in, there is Arabs, not necessarily Gibeonites, but in the town of the Gibeonites that actually was the only loyal Arab town to Israel in the 1948 War of Independence. So they kind of repaid Israel in a sense of being loyal to Israel, despite, basically a land covenant. They were adhering to the land covenant because they were in and had been shown favor by that, even though they weren't necessarily from the tribe of Gibeon. Gibeonites. And finally is to not show favor or mercy to idolaters, taken from chapter 7, verse 2. And then it's 7, verse 3, is to not intermarry with the 7 nations. It's often interpreted to mean to not intermarry or to not marry outside of the people Israel. The direct mitzvah is to not intermarry with the 7 nations of the Canaanites. Why? Again, it's for your own good, right? You read this in this whole portion that essentially keeping the mitzvot it's for your own good. For your own good. So some of the mitzvot that are taken from other places include do not add to the Torah. We see that in our portion here, but also where it's counted from is in chapter 12. And to subtract from the Torah is also from 4 verse 2, which is also taken from Deuteronomy chapter 12. But those are in the future, of course, looking back, where things are otherwise taken from were also from the 10 words that are taken from chapter 20 of the book of Shemot or Exodus. Lucia is watching online. Shalom, Lucia. So, 4 verse 1 and 2. Now, O Israel, listen or Shema to the laws. Chukim, it's often translated as laws. It is Chukim, Mishpatim, and Edot are the 3 different types of mitzvot. And I think that laws is often taken for Torah or the plural of Torah. But what are the kind of things called hukim? Give me an example of the hukim in Scripture.
There's a bunch of them.
Don't the 10 fall under that?
No. 10 typically are understood to be mishpatim, except for Shabbat, which is one of the essentially given because I said so. But the classic hukim, or hukot in different terminologies there, either masculine or plural, the classic version of the kind of mitzvah that is a huk comes from the red heifer. The command of the red heifer, the kind of this command is the kind that there's not a logical reason for doing it, and you do it because he told you to do it. Mishpatim are the kind of things that make sense. They're logical. You don't have to have a reason given. So the adot essentially are adot is a plural of witnesses. It's not in this particular passage, but the adot are the kind of things that there's a specific reason given for doing it. And the witnesses are witnesses of Yah's interactions with people. And among those types of mitzvah are the commands relating to the holidays, doing the holidays. And so in that sense, it would be an adot, like Shabbat would be an adot, even though it's basically given for you to do, telling you to do it. Now, hukim are those that you're told to do, but there's never a reason given for doing it. The underlying reason, as we read from this Torah portion, is the reason for doing any of the mitzvot is because it's for your own good. But mishpatim are the quote unquote right rulings. Mishpat is another word, or shafat is a word meaning judgment. But in this context, mishpatim are the kind of commandments that are given that you don't really have to give a reason for, because just saying it makes sense. For example, do not steal, do not murder. Those are all, you don't have to have a logical reason given to you. Why not?
Because they make sense.
They just make sense. Yeah. But also we see in 4 verse 2, do not add to the words I command you, and do not take away from it. As we saw in the previous slide, this is also taken from that mitzvah is those mitzvot, to not add to or take away, are actually included in chapter 12's of this portion's listing of mitzvot, at least according to Rambam. So ultimately, we get to the idea of Shema, so that you live. So you saw with your own eyes what Adonai did to Baal Peor, at Baal Peor, that Adonai destroyed from among all the men who followed Baal Peor. But you who stuck with Adonai your God are still alive today, every one of you. Look, I have taught you laws and rulings, or It's the same idea, same hukim and mishpatim. Oops, sorry. Wrong thing there. Apologize. Just that my God ordered me so that you can behave according to the land, or in the land where you're going to, in order to take possession of it. Again, quoting from chapter 4, verses 3 to 5. So, looking at this in terms of in Numbers 21, Moshe had a bronze serpent made of anyone that had been bitten would blink at the bronze serpent, they would blink. That's the teaching blank in a phrase. This is a teaching about the Messiah in John chapter 3. Well, if you fill in those blanks, it's, yes?
Look
Yes?
and live.
Look and live, that is correct. So look and live is a teaching about Yeshua. So following that up, how does listen and you will live, like from this portion, differ from the above? And to whom is this passage addressed? Where are they to perform these hukim and mishpatim, and for what purpose?
In this case, listen. Shema means more than just listen. It means listen and do.
It's related to the word Shema and Shamar, as a kind of derivative. Shema is Shin Mem Ayin, whereas Shamar Shin Mem Resh.
Right. And it means do. And to look is to do the action that you're supposed to do.
Well, here's a question: is it harder to look at something or harder to listen to something? I agree with Petra there. That in fact, listening takes more concentration, right?
Focus.
Focus. That's a good word. Listening, I think, is a bit harder in that sense.
There's a lot more responsibility to listening.
Okay. You can say individual responsibility too, because you're the one listening to that. You can all say that we all saw it, but listening to it and hearing it and then internalizing that is, I think, perhaps more challenging. But to whom is this passage being addressed? Why? What are they about to do? That's really the thing.
They were about to go into the land.
About to go into the land.
So it was to all those there
Yes.
and all the following generations.
Right. How successful was that?
What was it? One generation later?
Didn't take much, right?
Didn't take much. Never did.
It was an issue almost immediately with the idea of being fooled by making a covenant with people from the land, but also the classic, kind of the sine wave here is, when you're at the top, you're saying, okay, we did great. Wait a minute. Was it you that did great? No, but you say, okay, we are super blessed. And then what happens? Why
Start getting lazy about keeping his commandments.
we are, our blessing comes from our hard work. We did it all ourselves. It's all on us. Maybe, wow, we're getting low at the bottom here. Maybe some of those other gods are pretty cool too. Maybe we should probably investigate, what's the status of that? Yes, Ken.
May I ask a question?
Sure.
The word, you're talking about the word listen. To really listen, you have to focus.
Yes.
The word look does it not carry the connotation of not just glancing, but like staring?
I think Ray in a
Gazing.
sense does it. Okay, it's taking it all in. Yes, taking it all in.
I think you would need both. to really
Because
do
you
that.
can, if you glance, you can forget in a heartbeat what you've seen.
Yeah.
But would it not be in the kind of connotation if you will stare and gaze at the serpent, you will then if you stay there, stare, you gaze until they received from.
Yeah, because the idea of look and live is connotation wise. Look and live is the bronze serpent in the wilderness. That is a type and shadow of look and live from what Yeshua was talking about. And what's going on with the looking living in the wilderness? Well, why looking at a bronze serpent? Well, what's going on in the context? They're being
Obedient.
being obedient. But before, the reason for looking at a serpent is because they were being disobedient and the serpents were being bit. The fiery serpents were biting them. So where do serpents typically, where do they strike you from? The ground, right? If you're looking down for the serpents, you're not looking up at the bronze serpent. And so you're looking, in other words, your trust, it's basically, you're putting your trust in this, in doing what he said to do, looking at the bronze serpent. Because that's one thing, does it make sense to look at a bronze serpent instead of looking at the snakes on the ground that are going to bite you? No, it doesn't make sense, right? It's in terms of, it doesn't make sense if you're scared of snakes looking at
It's the whole point of faith, isn't it?
it is the whole point of faith. It is that
Don't
way.
look at the water, look at the man walking on it.
Sure, Joe, David.
Thanks for coming.
I'm sorry. Do you have a question?
No, just don't look at the water, look at the man walking on it.
Oh yeah. Well, it's never exactly the same idea. When Kepha was looking at Yeshua, he didn't have a problem. When Kepha stopped looking at Yeshua and started looking at the water, he began to sink. So, even though Israel didn't carry this out very well, it still is a lesson for us to the idea of not giving into the fear, but actually looking up, looking at the bronze serpent, looking at Yeshua. I meant this in the sense of looking at Yeshua in this context is taking in what it means. In other words, how does death bring life? Would be the way of looking at it, right? Looking and living, you are getting life. But in the context of Yochanan or John chapter 3, Yeshua is talking about his death, right? So ultimately, it's looking at Yeshua is the same idea as looking at Yeshua, or looking at Yeshua on the tree is the same as looking at him in the context of this bronze serpent. You will be healed, you will be saved, if you will, by
It's
one
kind
who
of-
being died. Say again?
Kind of, in a way, that rubs me a little wrong, because then that's, I mean, I agree, but that's associating Yeshua with the serpent.
With this, but it's in John 3.
I know, I
That's what it says.
understand. I just, initially, if you say that to someone,
Like
you're saying,
say-
you're comparing Jesus or Yeshua to the snake, the serpent, Satan.
Well, actually, Satan is called many different things, and Jesus is called in many different things. So it's like.
I'm just saying it
the whole
sounds
point
on the
of
surface,
the
it
whole
sounds
point
wrong.
of- well, the-
Yeah, but
Yeah,
on the
reason-
surface. But Yeshua uses it as a teaching. He's saying this is about him.
Yeah,
So
I'm not saying that to say, I wish shouldn't be in there. I'm just,
yeah, if you just look at it, I do agree. If you look at it as
yeah.
this,
Where
I'm
else
agreeing
would you
with something-
compare Yeshua to the snake?
Oh, Jesus also called a lamb and a lion and
Yeah.
According to tradition, at least, maybe we read it, maybe it's in one of the prophets as well, but somewhere it says that they had to basically powderize, get rid of
Because
the bronze
Israel started
serpents.
worshiping the snake.
Yes, exactly. Because just like anything else, you can start worshiping something
Mhm.
and, turn it to a real worship of a piece of bronze, that made with human hands, Even though it was probably made
We need
with
help
right
in
after
holy
they were
oath.
told not to.
They could look at it, and probably this is how it happened. They needed help from God. Say, oh, well, here's something from our past where we know God made a way, so let's take this out and do it again.
Yeah.
And He'll help us.
Kind of the
They
same
do
thing.
it.
Kind of the whole reason that Moses didn't get to go into the land, because he had done it one way once and he was told to do it a different way, and he smacked the rock instead of and instead of calling.
God's
for it.
very precise. Well, and the priests that He burned up because they weren't doing the service precisely right. He's precise in His commands.
And like having certain kind of talked about hold and whatnot, and like destroying that thing like after is like you put up a cross, put Jesus on it, and then it gets taken down, and he walks away.
So what symbol today uses that? What profession
Veterinary
uses
clinics.
it? Huh?
Veterinary clinics.
Anything medical, really.
Yeah, medical still uses the.
Actually,
Something I was saying.
actually that specifically goes back to Greek mythology.
I know, but it's still, they use the snake on
Yeah, they usually use a snake on it,
Yeah.
not just the.
Well, they're a pair of coiled snakes.
Sorry, didn't mean to take
No,
it
no,
sidebar.
I would say this is, during the Midrash last night at prison, that discussion about this took up a lot of the Midrash. We talked about this as well. Shamar is in the next, we see Shema in chapter 6, verse 4, for example. We also see Shamar, to keep and do, then Asa is to make or do. That is your chokmah, that is your wisdom, and your bina, that is your understanding. The sight of these people, they'll hear all these statutes, hukim, and say, surely this great nation is a wise and understanding people. So Israel is to do the Torah in the sight of the nations and speak the Torah to them so they will hear it, so that the nations will respond positively.
To be a light to the nations.
Why light to the nations. That's part of the doing and seeing. How well has this been carried out?
Not as well as they carried out every other command.
Not that.
They were supposed to take it to the nations and didn't, and then Jesus himself had to reiterate it.
So how well have we done in carrying this out?
Not so good.
Some more than others.
So
It has-
first
it
of
has-
all,
it has gone
we've
out
got to
some.
shamar it, right?
Yeah.
And asad, do it. And that is considered to be chokhmah, wisdom. And bina. So if you say chokhmah, bina, and da'at, would be wisdom, understanding, and what's da'at mean? Not in this passage, but
Knowledge?
knowledge, yeah. It's the acronym, of course, that Chabad comes from, chokhmah, bina, and da'at. Which brings us to what Art Scroll says. And I think there's a little bit of misunderstanding here, but we'll read it anyway. You shall safeguard and perform them. It is your wisdom and discernment in the eyes of the people. You shall hear all these decrees and who shall say, surely a wise and discerning people is this great nation. So I have no problem with the translation, but here is the commentary says, you shall safeguard. Usually this word shamar is translated as observe. In this verse, the word perform already implies observance of the commandments. Here the word refers to the study of Mishnah, the oral law, which one must commit to memory in order to know how to perform the commandments properly. What do you think about that? I'm not a fan of it either. Continuing, it says, Oh, I'm sorry. I'm saying, how would you respond to the highlighted text? Yeah, so this next one, get to the right place here. So here's how I would respond to that. This elevates Mishnah to the level of Scripture. And thus would say that not studying the Mishnah would therefore be disobeying Torah, i.e. sin. And so I would say this is, well, there's a question. Wasn't there's something about adding to or taking away?
Yeah, that's not,
Right in this same portion, it seems pretty odd to have made this leap to say that you shall safeguard. Shamar here is referring to the oral Torah, which seems pretty, self-refuting based on based on this Torah portion, so don't add to or take away from.
Translated as observe. How can you observe something that's oral?
Well,
How can you view something that is oral?
you should memorize it.
Well, how can you view it though? Observe.
Observe in the sense is to be observant is not necessarily meaning look at it. Right?
Because you observe certain objects.
By saying observing, you're not just sitting and watching on TV. Right? Continuing commentary here. Torah states that universal acknowledgement of Israel's wisdom will result even from its adherence to the decrees, the commandments for which no reason is revealed. So the word decrees there is the word hukim. Because the wisdom inherent in the parts of the Torah that are accessible to rational study will convince intellectually honest people that there must be great divine wisdom in the decrees as well. So does traditional Christianity agree or disagree with this reasoning? Why or why not?
Traditional Christianity doesn't follow them because they take one verse out of context and that Paul stated and said that the law was done away with, so they don't want to do it.
Yeah, so the traditional teaching in Christianity is that the mishpatim are the ones that are to observe because you can make a rational reason for doing
Ones
it.
that make sense to
What that makes sense. But it's taken that the adot are for Israel only, and the hukim are considered to be the ceremonial law, quote unquote, and so you don't do those. That's what is taught in traditional Christianity. So I have a vignette from some years back on a website that I used to be involved a lot in called studylight.org. A traditional Christian and I, this is kind of on the same context, we're discussing Acts 21, James and the Jerusalem Council, and that request to Paul to do something. The request was, take them with you and be purified with them and pay the expenses connected with having their heads shaved. Then everyone will know that there is nothing to those rumors which they have heard about you, but that on the contrary, you yourself stay in line and keep the Torah. That's from Acts 21:24. So I pointed this verse out, and his response was this. In this situation, we see clearly that the whole thing is meant as a show of Torah obedience, so that James and Paul might be thought at odds, but might not be at odds with one another by the Jewish brethren, or thought to be not at odds by the Jewish brethren. So yes, I think there's a degree of being suckered by the party of the circumcision in this. Jesus taught, be careful not to let your good deeds before men, to do your good deeds before men. That seems to have been overlooked in the advice given to Paul by James. What do you think about that response?
Sounds pretty standard.
It basically implies that James is being sinful here, right? He is being deceptive. So it's a pretty strong accusation to say, this biblical author is being deceptive here. It's a pretty hard road to, I think, adhere to, but what he's referring to is a passage from Matthew chapter 6, which says, be careful not to do your acts of righteousness before men to be seen by them. If you do, you'll have no reward from your Father in heaven. That's the passage he was referencing. But there's also the passage in the previous chapter of Matthew that says, let your light shine before men in such a way that they may see your good works and glorify your Father who is in heaven. So there's a conflict between these passages.
What is your light? It defines it.
Well,
Your
right,
good.
Light
What's
defines
the
as your
difference
good
between
deeds,
letting
right?
your light shine and acts of righteousness? Because there's a difference. Letting your light shine is showing it's doing stuff, yeah, and letting your light shine. But acts of righteousness, I believe, is specifically because it specifically mentioned the tithe, and I mean, don't show off that you're giving your tithe. Don't show off that you're fasting. Don't show off those
Yeah,
kind of things.
That's the goal, is to show off
Right.
so that you can gain
Which is
glory.
what 6:1 is talking about.
All your money into it.
Well, let's think about if you think about
Look at
this,
you, I'm amazing.
it's Matthew is showing a very, it shows that the idea of this particular word dates back to Matthew's time. What does the word tzedakah mean? What does the word tzaddik mean? Righteous. Tzedek is righteous. Tzaddik is a righteous person. Tzedakah
Is something you need to practice.
is your
Right.
giving.
Yeah, it's giving
Is your giving. That's what you can buy it. We have somewhere, it's not here, I guess, maybe it is, I'm not sure where it's at. We have a tzedakah box, right? That was the box for giving. And so what this is, I think, indicating is acts of righteousness in the sense of the traditional idea of what is doing tzedakah is giving money or giving alms to the poor, but you're not to do it. Oh, I have a hard time stuffing this $1,000 bill into the,
Yeah, another example was in our portion today where God told the people of Israel to do those, and then the other nations will look at them and say, "See, what a righteous nation." Same thing. They're not to hide what they do.
So,
Right.
in other words, that's another witness to the
They're not.
They're not to
bad
hide it,
interpretation
it's not
by
to-
God.
yeah, We're not to show off with what we do, because when people go, "Ooh, wow, you're so cool," then you've already been rewarded. Was it?
But if you have to
Matthew
prance
6 was actually
around
literally talking
like a buffoon,
We see it,
then
we see
all
that
it's going
concept
to
later
do
in this
is
portion
make
as
them
well.
think, these people are so arrogant.
You can't help
Why
that
would
when
I
you're
listen to
doing
them?
some of your righteous deeds, somebody sees it.
Right. But it's the same idea
You're
of,
not doing it to be seen.
it's the same idea of, look at me, my tzitzis go past my knees,
Yes.
therefore I am super righteous. Obviously,
Well,
he's so
that should be
righteous, the
a sign
tzitzis
to
are
you.
so long, they're dragging on the ground.
Yeah, I was noticing yours down below your knee.
So that's unrighteous. They're super thick too.
And with the whole that your light shine before men in such a way that they may see your good
There you
works
go.
and glorify
That could
your
be-
Father who is in heaven.
That could be
That is-
misinterpreted
that
as
is
showing
just-
off.
Because what you're supposed to do with that is you're just doing your thing. You just go up.
They
and
see
the
they're not doing
results.
it to get attention from others.
They
Yeah.
they see the results of.
You're not going before people and saying, "All right, y'all watch now, I'm fixing to do a command of God."
No, you're just like, you okay?
I'm picking up this bird from its, with its.
Brush them off.
Look at me, I'm picking up
Your
a rod.
gospel.
Hey, everybody, watch this.
Oh, this person on the ditch. You're welcome. Bye. That's like you're like
It's the difference between doing what you're supposed to do and showing off so people notice you're doing what you're supposed to do.
You're letting your light shine. You're just constantly doing these things that will show up, but you're not just doing it for a.
You're not doing it for attention.
acts of righteousness before men. It's like just making sure everybody, because when you're doing your acts of righteousness before men, it's like
I mean,
Going up
Matthew,
to it,
Matthew gave
you-
examples. I mean, they
you
gave
wait
examples.
until
of that.
everybody is watching before. Here, let me help you out.
Praying
with
on
this.
the
Wow,
street
these are
corner.
amazing.
Out
And then
loud
that
and
helps the other person in the
verbosely.
ditch when everyone's not looking.
Putting on an awful face when you're fasting, so everybody knows you're fasting.
So it comes down to
And
your
put-
inner motive.
Putting massive amounts of money in the collection box.
Or at least
making
making
sure everybody
the
knows about
coins very loudly.
Yeah,
and
listen.
rock them in, right?
Hold them up here so it makes a big noise when it falls in.
Yeah.
Oh, look at this. Like,
We get it, you have gold bricks.
So we all know that.
Good job. All right, Devarim 4, verse 10. The day you stood before Adonai, your God at Horeb, and Adonai said to me, gather the people and to me, and I'll make them hear my words, so that they'll learn to hold me in awe as long as they live on earth, and so they will teach, and so that they will teach their children. Well, so what day is the day of the ecclesia? Well, assembly. If you look at it, this as it's written, it's kind of on fine print there, small print, but in the translation from Hebrew to Greek, in the Septuagint, it calls it the day of the assembly on Horeb, on the day of the assembly. Or in Greek, it would be what? Well, it's the day of ecclesias, which is feminine genitive singular form of ecclesia, also used Matthew 18:17, and more than 25 other times in the Greek versions of the apostolic scriptures or the Pentateuch. What day is the day of the ecclesia? Well, this is speaking about that day, Shavuot, but
I was right.
it's spoken of here in that it's the day. Well, I mean, we see it several times: day of the ecclesia, day of the assembly. We typically think of ecclesia as New Testament church, quote unquote. That's how it's been taught. But in fact, if you look at the Bible that the Greek-speaking apostles would have had, the day the assembly was in history, right?
Mhm.
It's history in the past, Shavuot, history in its current time with Shavuot as well, right? With the coming of the Ruach Kodesh. So it's a dual fulfillment of that same idea. The day of the ecclesia is dating back to Moshe's time, but looking forward to it at Mount of Olives also. So the 10 words is in parallel with covenant. He proclaimed his covenant to you, which is the 10 words. So his covenant is the 10 words, or in that context. Now, which parts of this covenant were affirmed by Yeshua? Which parts of this covenant are accepted, and which parts are rejected by traditional Christianity? Well, if you're looking at the 10 words as being his covenant, part of the 10 words includes Shabbat, right?
Yep.
And so I think that all the covenant, in order for Yeshua to be Mashiach, were confirmed. He would not be disobeying it and be Mashiach. But the parts that are rejected, I think, by traditional Christianity would be the parts that say, keep Shabbat. So breaking the covenant by breaking Shabbat in that sense. So Moshe, the book of Devarim, I think, has a lot of prophecy in it. In the words that Moshe said in this, and we'll see it later. We'll see it really hard and get to chapter 30. But this is what Moshe's prophecy says. Adonai will scatter you among the peoples, among the nations, which Adonai will lead you away. You will be left few in number. There you will serve gods, which are the product of human hands, made of wood and stone, which can't see, hear, eat, or smell. So the idea of being sent away, verse 30, in your duress, when all these things have come upon you, in the Akrit Hayamim. I want to say that I think maybe Jim's reading was this one because what is Akrit Hayamim? How do you translate that into English? See?
The days to come.
Days to come could be really latter days or last days, the end of days. You recognize the end of Sukkot is called the Shemini Atzeret, the 8th day. This is not Shemini Atzeret, it's the end of the feast day, but Acharit means after, this is the after or end of. Shemini Atzeret is 8th day solemn assembly, so it's not quite the same word Acharit or Atzeret, but it has the same sort of connotation as the closing festival of Sukkot. Acharit is the end of Hayamim, end of days, the last days. So in the last days, you'll return to Adonai God and listen to what he says. So what is the status of this prophecy? Excuse me, can't speak. Well, yes.
This has been fulfilled multiple times because they've fallen away and come back, and fallen away and come back, and fallen away and come back. Currently, it's not completely come back because they didn't seek God to this time.
Well,
God called them back because he was fulfilling other parts of prophecy. They haven't turned to him fully yet.
it seems to me that this prophecy hasn't been fulfilled many times because of the phrase in the Acharit Hayamim. So I don't necessarily think that the coming back out of Babel or Babylon would be a fulfillment of this, because it's not really the last days. But Israel has been in exile and has returned from that in the past.
All except for that last verse. The rest of it has happened many, many times.
Yeah, so here's the thing though, how good is Israel listening to what Yah says today? I think it's not that great. There is a return to the land, that is true. But are they truly seeking Adonai your God, as it says? Are they searching for him with all your heart and all your nefesh, all your being? Might be debatable.
I don't think they ever will until Yeshua comes back to rule and reign. There'll always be that ebb and flow.
A covenant at Horeb. This is again at Horeb is Horeb is Mount Sinai covenant. Since Sabbath was part of the 10 words given at Horeb, and the verse says covenant was not made with our fathers, doesn't this prove that the patriarchs did not keep Sabbath? Why or why not? Yes.
No, it doesn't, mainly, primarily because these rules were given to the people, because God commanded from the beginning, this is a set apart day in Genesis.
Yeah. Sabbath dates from Rashid, not from Shemot, so to speak.
2, 1 through 3.
And the whole reason it was added to the, and it was mentioned in the commandments, was because we were good at listening to it in the first place.
And it needed to be written down.
And to give it kind of covenantal status, I think, as well. It is part of the covenant.
So the way to kill the devil, the way to correct that is to say, yeah, you're supposed to keep the Sabbath, but what day was the Sabbath really?
Must have been Sunday.
There's so many times when people have changed the days of the week.
Yeah, I mean,
It's
that's
still the
a
seventh day. They've tried to,
tool of the enemy.
they tried to
doubt.
change it to a
That's what he
10-day
did with
week.
Eve, put
And
doubt.
it lasted, what, less than a year?
About France? France at the time of the.
Thought the Romans tried that once also.
The Romans did it with 8.
Oh, they did it with 8 days. Yeah, that didn't last very long either.
This is a passage that I think you can turn to and kind of show to your friends in the sense of why you do what you do, or why should you follow things that don't make sense. It says, this is from Devarim 5:32-33. Keep them and put them into practice, such as Yahweh's command you. Stay neither to the right nor left, stray neither to the right or left. Follow the whole way that Yahweh has marked for you, and you will survive and prosper and live according to the country which you are going to possess. So in other words, keep the commandments for your own good, and in parallel with choose life. Yes.
The the food laws really do fall under this a lot, because like a lot of you're not really given reasons in the Bible as to why these animals do not eat.
Right.
But we have discovered through science and observation and all that there are reasons you don't eat these animals. I've actually been working on this the entire time. An hour or so.
And you bringing that up in one of the as one of the
Yeah, like kosher birds tend to have less bacteria on average and have a higher reproductive rate, whereas all the birds that were listed as do not eat tend to have a low, would tend to be high in bacteria because they're either scavengers or they're meat eaters.
well, the meat eaters eat also scavenge.
And or they tend to be terrible parents and have a low reproductive rate. But eagles straight up will just feed the first chick that hatches and then none of the rest of them. Because like if we went out and ate all the animals that were listed don't eat that, we would wipe them out rather quickly.
It would actually explain why some birds are.
I think most of the world does do that.
Reptiles have bacteria, like a ton of bacteria. You do not let this.
You lick a turtle, you instantly get salmonella.
So, only frogs.
Amphibians have bacteria, tons of bacteria, and or toxins. Like the majority of them have toxins.
All toads are toxic.
In one way or another.
Bugs that fly and have high legs for jumping eat green plants and are non-toxic. Every other bug can eat plants, but they but they also eat sweat, poop, blood, corpses, other bugs, and maybe toxic. So like there's a whole like the more you observe nature, the more you realize there was a reason.
We're going good.
And pigs are one of the most highly
I mean, they absorb they absorb and hold toxins in their bodies for decades. They also bacteria, and they have more parasites per square inch than they have muscle.
and you can't kill all of the parasites that they have by fire.
The only way you
I-
can is by incinerating.
Well, no,
Completely.
I believe,
The parasites will still be there.
right, the parasites will still be there, because, I think the temperature required to kill some of the parasites in a pig,
It's hot enough
is-
to start a sun.
no, it was like,
You
like
have to-
2,400 degrees.
It practically
Enough to
charcoal by the
melt
time, the pig's been charcoal for like hours before you even succeed in killing those parasites.
There's a reason behind it.
Yeah, that and
It's just,
pigs
we
are
didn't know
like
until
inches
recently.
away from tasting like human.
Well, there's no reason given in the Torah.
Yeah.
Right. And
That's-
at the time,
Nobody
they had
knew
no understanding of why.
In the West, pig is probably the most commonly, it's the cheapest, easiest to,
Cheapest meat,
cheapest meat
or
available.
was, not
It no
now.
longer is, which is hilarious.
Which is nice though.
We recently found out that we've been trying to be careful about feeding our dogs, trying to feed our dogs kosher. Dog food no longer has pork in it because humans eat too much or eat so much of it that the
Not
price
available for
going
dogs
up and
anymore.
everything. They don't put pork in unless it specifically states it. They don't put pork in dog food anymore.
That's weird. I was not aware of that.
I wasn't either until I started researching it because we were trying to figure out that because it always says meat and meat byproducts, and it's like we did some research and it's like, yeah, that's not going to be pork because pork's worth too much to the human population.
Why has the price gone up? I mean, has there been shortages? I mean, or there's been
I'm
sort of
not
plague?
sure
plague of
about
pigs?
shortages, but it's supply and
Because the
demand.
other meat's too
The supply
expensive.
hasn't really changed much,
They
but the
can raise
demand
it
is
and
still
they'll
goes
buy
up.
it.
And the thing about, and when it comes to horses, like, what is their job? They're a pack animal. You use them to carry things.
Yeah.
Rabbits and other rodents are designed to wipe out small infestations of fast-growing plants, so as to control the environment.
One of the places, a lot of that
And then feed the
Doesn't-
predators,
doesn't hold up.
so that they don't
Like
eat your
the
too
fish.
much. and like every
Because a
time you
lot of
mess
kosher
with
fish are scavenger bottom feeder fish. They eat crap that comes down,
Right, they're,
carp and all that.
yeah, they're not eating it necessarily off the bottom, that catfish are the
Well,
ones that do
doesn't
that
matter.
specifically, and they're not kosher.
It don't matter. Carp do, they sit on the bottom, that's why their mouth's curved down.
Mm.
Guppies just eat the.
Yet they
while
have
it's
fins and
falling.
scales.
Yeah,
Did you go? Guppy or dumb?
guppies are
So
Yeah.
there's reasoning behind, yeah, they eat crap, so they're not kosher, but hey, that's not stated in Bible. Some of them do eat that stuff.
I don't know, it may have something to do with the way they process it.
Could be.
Yeah.
All we know is
And like, you look at giraffes, they're parasite ridden.
Giraffes.
Mm-hmm.
Aren't giraffes clean though?
yep,
Nope.
giraffes are
Yes, they
kosher.
are.
Giraffes are
They,
kosher.
they chew the cud and they have a split hoof.
No, they don't.
Yes,
Yeah, they do.
Giraffes do.
Camels don't.
Camels
Camels.
don't, no.
Giraffes are kosher.
For some reason, humans have been milking
Is it
camels.
a full split hoof? Or partial split hoof?
It just has a split hoof.
No, it does specify complete split hooves.
Well, when you're looking at
Oh, I have no
Up.
data connections.
the Shema, is we read that today. We did that twice, right? We did the Shema, the Ve'ahavta. We read it in our reading. As you see on the screen, the Ayin and the Dalet are enlarged. In the Chumash over there, you can look it up in a closer version, but it's also shows it being enlarged. As we mentioned, together the letters Ayin and Dalet spell the word aid, which is witness. This suggests to the Shema as a testimony or witness to the sovereignty of Yah, and our primary duty is to love Him, and with our whole being, as in the Ve'ahavta, and you shall love. The word Shema and the Dalet and the word Shema itself and the Dalet from Echad are missing, as you might expect, from the Qumran scrolls, as is most of Devarim 6 verse 3. Those worms enjoy
Dang
that
worms.
the
So are
particular.
those worms now kosher?
I think those worms are probably dead. So dead worms, I wouldn't recommend, or live ones either, for that matter. The covenant, which we saw as the 10 words, covenant is also on your heart. These words, which I'm ordering you today, are to be where? On your heart. And to teach them carefully to your children. You're talking about them when you sit at home, or traveling on the road, when you lie down, and when you get up. So on your heart and upon your lips. In other words, all the time, on your heart and on your lips. All the time. Yes.
The thing is if it specifically says the heart, the Bible times especially did not see the heart as the same way we do. It was not the seat of your emotion, it was the seat of your understanding. Which is why in the New Testament, when it says the heart is deceitful among all things, it's not because it's emotional, it's because it thinks it's too smart. So it's keep it on your, we would say keep it on your mind. Always be thinking about it.
So the question to Tefillin and mezuzot, to bind them on your arm, let your ornaments between your eyes, and write them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates. Is this allegorical or meant to be literally performed? In ancient times, as in today, you can see that we have remnants from times of Qumran about those items. And although I don't really have any the measurements on this, what we see from the Qumran examples is they're much smaller than the ones that are traditionally in service today. The large ones I think have been imported from essentially the traditions of the Pharisees during that time.
We're trying to show it off.
Trying to show it off, exactly. These look like they could probably be worn. They're small enough they could be worn pretty much all the time, whether you're working or not.
Which was probably the intent.
It's essentially because you're essentially saying you're doing this all the time. Yes.
Okay, I'm wondering if it's allegorical because they weren't given a specific command on how to do that. Like if they were specifically told to put it on a strap and tie it to the wrist, like if it was that specific, then it wouldn't be taken as then you wouldn't have to ask the question. But because because they don't specify how to do that, it's more likely to be metaphorical.
Is it?
Because
Well-
the Bible does describe what to do.
If you
But
are
the-
holding the scroll in your hand, you've got it in.
Does
your hand
the Bible
before your eyes.
describe how to tie tzitzits?
No, but it does say to make them.
It does give some.
But it doesn't
blue
say
thread.
make leather, make straps and tie them to your forehead.
Didn't say anything about belt loops.
It says.
Didn't say about belt loops.
It says.
And that's the thing, if you're reading the scroll, it's in your hand, and it's before your face.
And you commit it to memory by writing it.
So I don't think it's exactly metaphor, it is,
You can take it literally, but it's more often than not.
more metaphorically as opposed to allegorically.
And like,
Because you're doing something with it,
and people.
as
like
opposed
that,
to physically just.
like you literally see people, you see people in school cheating by writing math problems and whatnot on their arm.
On the tefillin? Probably not writing it on their
I
tefillin.
don't know if my version says it, but I have seen some versions which would say, kind of agreeing with what they're saying. It would say, do this command, or keep this command as if it were a sign on your head. As if.
In italics, right? Well, we see from this passage, and the next slide kind of shows as we've said, everything that they do is to be seen by others. So they make their tefillin broad and their tzitziot long.
Look at me, I'm keeping their commands.
But question, what I would say is you should take an issue with wearing tefillin and tzitzit. He doesn't say don't wear them. He's saying they're basically doing it for showing off.
Why you're wearing.
And so that his idea kind of lines a lot, I guess, with the smaller version of those at Qumran.
Well, you'd think that if they were
Potentially.
supposed to be worn all the time, that means while you're working in the field, you're supposed to wear them. So they're going to be small and not get in your way at
Right.
work.
Because they only put, traditionally, they only put them on when they're praying.
Well,
And that isn't what the command said.
And the tzitzit they wore wouldn't be clean because they would have worn them all day out cutting wheat. Wouldn't be clean like the ones you just put on the sack.
so Dixie's wondering, are there any questions? She's taking that.
No question.
Yes.
During the Isaiah reading, like my brain latched onto the one that you actually brought up in the what or is
In the Midrash? Or
during
the-
during the flood challenge.
Okay. uh-huh.
The stand around the circle of the earth. Okay.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And the heavens are a tent over it, and it is like, and people think that the Bible says something about the earth being square.
Or flat.
Oh, it's because it calls the quarters of the earth.
Yeah,
If you're going to measure a sphere, you divide it into quarters.
Yeah, and then the old joke, he said, you'll be able to find good women in all corners of the earth, then he made the world round.
Good women.
Right. You'll be able to find good women in all corners of the world. And then he made the world round.
Laugh.
And
That's
laugh.
why. That's
Yeah,
why-
and then the next line was.
That's
and
why he
laugh.
called her woman when he made her. He stood back and looked at her, he looked at Adam, and then he said, woe unto man.
Or, whoa, man.
Whoa, man.
That's what Adam said.
Yeah, Adam said that.
Whoa, man.
All right, let's go ahead and close. Abba, thank you for allowing us to midrash on your word. Thank you for the ability to study in freedom. Abba, thank you for your many blessings in Yeshua's name. Amen.
So I'm wondering,